Welcome back to the Barry Charles Footy Show, your one-stop shop for everything rugby league. Yes, what a weekend of footy we had, with the brain snap of Tyrell Sloan, injuries to Jerome Luai, Kayln Ponga, and so much more. Jamal Fogarty, is he on his way up? He wants to move on from the Raiders. That's the talk going about. Is Josh Schuster, what's happening there? Should he be gone after Manly get a convincing win? And everything else in rugby league. Well, yes, let's get to the very good win from the Warriors and Tyrell Sloan's brain snap. They gave them the victory. Yes, absolute debacle. All he had to do was put his hand on the ball and force it. Instead, he was trying to pick it up. He left it behind and left it in a beautiful try for Noah Blake as the Warriors continue their march towards September footy. They are on fire and they are a big chance the Warriors are doing some damage, especially with what's been happening over the last week with Penrith going down, Jerome Luai injured, Kayln Ponga now injured and will miss next week and possibly longer. There's some big issues with a lot of the teams. Even the Warriors had an injury with Metcalf, so there's a lot to get through. But for Warriors fans out there, Tamati Martin is ready to replace him. Yes, Tamati Martin, straight swap. Some people would argue might be a better player, so there's no problems there with the Warriors. But the biggest problem for the Warriors, though, is still their lapses sometimes with discipline and their defence. That's going to be the question mark going forward, that if they can do that in finals football, because they're going to be, at this stage, looking like playing Penrith. Funny how things can happen here. Could still play the Broncos, so there's some big games to come. They can easily drop to fourth if they lose to the Dolphins, so they need to win. But anyway, yes, absolutely, yeah, the Warriors are a chance in the finals football. But yes, getting to the injury news, yes, Kayln Ponga, gone. Is he gone for the season? That's the question mark. Everyone's saying it's only a 1 week injury. If it was a grand final, he would play, so it's maybe not so bad for him. But this is Jackson Hastings going to return also. Even though Adam Clune seems to be able to, they're not missing a beat much there. But Kayln Ponga out. Will they still win next week? Regardless, they're pretty much safe for, well, they are safe for the home semi, so they could be resting players as well. So it's going to be an interesting weekend on for who's going to rest players, because obviously the Cowboys are still a chance of making the top 8, and will Penrith rest all their stars like they did last year and give Cowboys the top 4 advantage, but this year they'll be helping the Cowboys make the top 8. But Penrith, are they going backwards? Obviously no Dylan Edwards. There was a costly mistake, clearly not putting Dylan Edwards on. He's proving to be the key player in this team, even though everyone's saying clearly, even myself thinking. But Luai as well been out. Going to be an interesting how they go. The Panthers here, they're interesting to see how they go without Luai. Can they still win the comp? I'm starting to question mark there. They're still probably the team to beat. Broncos are clearly going well and doing it without Reynolds as well. So will they rest Reynolds again? This week is going to be interesting. There's a lot of things happening around everything. Jerome Hughes injured for the Storm, so that's going to be a big game on there. Who's going to win that game? That's a big one, because Storm are trying to push for maybe even third spot if they can win and the Warriors lose. But the thing is, they're in the Storm, and no doubt top 4 there. They look like a team. There's a big chance of going further. Yes, what's happening with Jamal Fogarty? Yes, Fogarty talks as he wants out. They already lost Jack Whiten. They lose him. Where do they go? They need something in a hurry, and they haven't signed anyone on the Raiders, so I'm not sure who they're looking at. Do they bring Blake Austin back maybe for some experience? There's a bit of danger signs for the Raiders next season, and obviously even this season they can come as high as, if they win against the Sharks, they get a home semi. If they lose, they could be out of the top 8. They'll be wanting the Cowboys to lose to Penrith. They'll know by then what their fate is, but Cowboys beat Penrith, they have to win. But if they don't, then they'll be safe and be 8th. So that's going to be a big game, Penrith and Cowboys, for a lot of teams to see where everyone finishes. But yes, it's going to be Jamal Fogarty for the Raiders here. The Raiders, I think, are going to go backwards after the season. Is going to be an interesting play there. But let's talk about the elephants in the room. So, Broncos, Adam Reynolds is a question. Patrick Carrington, I think he's okay. It was more of a resting stage there. But Reynolds, not 100%. So that's a big question mark for them. Can they continue? Penrith, Jerome Luai, is he out indefinitely? Is he out for the season? He reckons preliminary final, but will they get to the preliminary final without Luai? Well, obviously they're going to have to win the first game up in the finals. Then you got the Knights, obviously, with Kayln Ponga, and even Jackson Hastings. Is he even fully fit back? So they've got issues in South. The Warriors, obviously, Luke Metcalf is out, but Tamati Martin's replacement there. The Storm, Jerome Hughes is more likely going to be out of the next game. Will it be longer? There's going to be question marks over that. And where do they put him one? Does Meany just get a halfback and Pappenhausen the fullback? It's going to be an interesting time. So you obviously got Jonah Pearson as well that can come straight back in as well. So that's going to be depending on what they want to do there. They probably will put Jonah Pearson there, I'd presume. Nick Meany will go into the centres halves, depending on what they want to do there. It's going to be an interesting season coming up. This final season is going to be interesting. I still don't think anyone from the bottom are going to be able to win, even though people were saying the Knights are on that ride of Jared Hayne. I just don't see it. I honestly, I just don't see them beating. If you're going, people say yes, they can beat the Warriors, but I don't see them beating either Warriors or Storm. I don't think they'll beat either of them. And if they have to play Penrith or Broncos, well, to me, they're just no-shows of beating them. So I don't see the Knights doing it. I don't see the Sharks doing it. I don't see the Raiders doing it. I don't see the Rabbitohs doing it. I don't see the Roosters doing it. Cowboys, whoever makes those spots, I don't see them getting through to the preliminary final. Doesn't mean it's all they can't, but I seriously doubt that any of them can. The Sharks have been too up and down the season. But clearly, if Knights continue to win, they're obviously the most likely out of any team that can push the team out. But they have to travel. That's going to be the thing. They're going to have to travel for the next game. The home game will be alright for them. You'd expect the Knights to win the home game, assuming they'll get 5th. But who do they take on? That's going to be the question. They're going to take on the Raiders. So it's depending on how all the draw works out. They'll probably, I think, from the draws, they'll either play Raiders or Roosters. I think is what it'll come down to. Because if the Raiders, I suppose there's also Cowboys are in the mix. So there's so many mixed things that can happen here depending on results, who wins where. But yeah, so there's probably 3 opportunities here. Cowboys could get 8th. And the Raiders, because if the Rabbitohs win, they'll jump in front of the Raiders. It all depends on if the Raiders do as well, if they can beat the Sharks. Because Rabbitohs do have a good for and against. So it's going to be an very interesting finish to this competition on where everyone's going to end up. But I can see it. And Josh Schuster, what's happening there? Time to Gizzo. Well, to be honest, I don't understand why they signed him for that bigger contract, to be honest. Yet to prove it. He's got the talent, but looks like another TPJ, as I've said before on this channel. What do Manly do? I think you just put him in the second row. See if he comes up next season, and if he doesn't, well, I'm sure he'll find a way out and end up somewhere else. I'm not sure. It just seems to be one of these things where some players just not up to NRL. Obviously, they're chasing the money. That's why they're there. But are they really that into the game? That's a big question mark that some of these players have. They're just playing for the money more than for the love of the game, and it's clearly, as you can see in some clubs, that this has been the issue for them throughout the season, and some teams just don't seem to be in love with the game, or some of the players, for instance, and it just becomes a cancer between the clubs. But anyway, that's the Barry Charles Footy Show for this episode, and I'll be back tomorrow with more.